can understand or even imagine. In Islam, there is a special section where Muslims are taught to be loyal only to their Islam and only to their fellow Muslims. No matter how long the native Muslims live in a country, and no matter how much help they receive from that country, they will always be first loyal to Islam and to their fellow Muslims, regardless of their citizenship. Any agreement they made with an infidel can be broken and disregarded once they are strong enough to control the infidel. In Islam, God gives the Muslims permission to deceive the infidel in order to reach their goal. You all are very familiar with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And you wonder why this matter is so complicated and if it will ever end. You must realize that for the Israelis to make peace with the Palestinians, the Israelis have to make peace with every Muslim country in the world, because it is not a matter of nationalistic pride, but a conflict between the religions. I know it is very difficult for you to understand the true teaching of Islam, and it is damages to the brain of the believer. But it is time for you to understand. It is time to bring up the truth of Islam to the attention of the civilized nation. It is time to be vigilant. It's time to watch who next door neighbor is, your next door neighbor is. It's time to be careful of whom you let into your country. In fact, it is time to re-evaluate your constitution and the principle of freedom of religion. Clarifying what constitutes a religion and what principles of religion are acceptable to us for the protection of humanity. You cannot make Islam into a peaceful and loving religion by just claiming it is so. No matter how many times you say it, it will never be the way. Islam is not a religion compatible with the civilized world, and impossible for Islam to live in harmony with other religions. Because they want to dominate other religions and be in control. Therefore, the only way to reform Islam is to be blunt and truthful to the public and to protect the outspoken Muslims. Also, I just want to make it clear that there are many millions of Muslims who are wonderful people, but they avoid discussing their religion because they are ashamed of it. And they are convinced that they cannot do anything about it. And if they do try, they would have to live in fear for their lives the way I do. But if the advanced society protects these Muslims, they will speak up, and Islam will eventually be broken and reformed by the Muslims themselves. Please, don't let your civilized way to become your worst enemy and to become a weak point in protecting this country and all the civilized countries of the world. Thank you for listening, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Are we getting a little less worried about how to respond to newspaper editors or to politicians that don't tell the truth and pander for trade union votes? In the 18th century, a young prince of the House of Savoy wrote to Giuseppe Mazzini, the great philosophical father of Italian independence, what he should do about duplicity in the royal house and his royal court, how he should handle lack of courage, how he should handle the deceptions that were being foisted upon his people that he wanted to reverse. Mazzini answered with a famous line that resonates throughout history. Si voi non fate, altri faranno, e contro voi e senza voi. If you don't act, others will, and against you, and without you, and if our silence stays as it is, we will be acted against. If we don't support the political leadership that stands up, the public intellectual leadership that stands up, the voices you're hearing, and if we don't propagate that message, we will lose. And we will lose mightily. It's at our door. That's the existential question of today. We've been faced for over a generation with myths. We've been mired in the myths of moral relativism and political equivalency. Tout le monde occidental, pas seulement Canada, confronté depuis 20 ans avec ces mythes. Ces caricatures d'égalitarisme a même fois été jugées trompeuses et ridicules. Elle a produit des intellectuels émasculés, dénués de sens moral et de conscience, qui se retrouvent dans un monde de débauche intellectuelle cautionnée pour une structure qui ne demande aucune compte. Il est temps de sonner le réveil et de demander une compte. It's time that we bring our public intellectuals, our newspapers, who practice this false kind of moral relativism to account. And that means you pull your advertising, so you pull your advertising. So you'll have a few customers less. You advertise double and somewhere else. Use power, because media institutions are evil. There is evil abroad. Evil doesn't just mean that somebody confronts you to your face at home. You've got to be able to look forward. Dante wrote it best. The hottest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis. Now, I think Donnie Darwish will pardon me if we get back to Canada. We've had Montreal, we've had Washington, we've had California, we're going back to Canada, Vancouver. Here's a young lady who is not keeping silence in a time of moral crisis. Not keeping silence, not on a global matter, but for one girl, for one 18-year-old girl. Edward R. Murrow used to say, there are no big stories. It's the little stories that matter. It's the little stories that make peoples turn against tyranny. You know, when Murrow brought down Senator Joe McCarthy and brought an end to that era, it wasn't because of any massive attack. He focused on one story, a young lieutenant named Milo Radulovic, who was unjustly thrown out of the Air Force because he dared to talk to his father and sister, who both subscribed to the Daily Worker. Can you imagine that? That story destroyed the wall of McCarthyism. That one story. 12 months after that story ran, Joe McCarthy was censored by the Senate in that famous hearing when Joe Welch, the lawyer for the United States Army, looked at him and said, Mr. Senator, Senator McCarthy, sorry, call him Mr. Senator, have you no shame? Have you no decency left? Nazanin Afshin-Jam is asking that not only of the Iranian government, but she is challenging us as Canadians. Have we no courage left? Ladies and gentlemen, Nazanin Afshin-Jam.